Welcome to Turning Words into Effective Action, an online panel on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives for nonprofits and the communities that they serve. I'm Diana McClure, Chair of the Steering Committee of the Brookline League of Women Voters, whose members also include Felina Silver, who's on the panel, and Shayna Pena, who is managing the chat. We're glad to see those of you who have joined this session by Zoom, and welcome those watching this event live streamed on Brookline Interactive Group YouTube channel or Facebook Live, as well as being televised on its RCN and Comcast channels. The session will be recorded and available for later viewing on the BIG website, as well as on the League's website, and it will be rerun on BIG. We so appreciate our partnership with BIG. It's been a huge help. The League's mantra is empowering voters and defending democracy. Our core mission is civic engagement and voter education, and that means for everyone. Our overarching goal is to use the lens of equity and inclusion in everything that we do. We see tonight's panel as a down-to-earth, realistic discussion about the need for our organizational structure to reflect these values and to understand the importance of relationships and to get specific recommendations that together we can work on. We trust that this discussion will be helpful for many nonprofits and other organizations in town. This focus is even more vital in the 2024 election cycle, where voters' interest is high, divisions are apparent, but opportunities for engagement are endless. The Brookline Community Foundation report, Understanding Brookline, Our Community, Our Story, was formally rolled out on November 2nd, 2023. It provides detailed information, among other things, on Brookline's growth and increasing diversification from 2010 to 2020. The 2020 census puts our population at 63,191. Brookline is more culturally and racially diverse than in 2010, and the following statistics demonstrate the need for engagement in order for all Brookline residents to be at the table, so to speak. The number of Brookline residents who were born outside of the U.S. grew to 31% here in Brookline, from 26% in 2010, a 5% increase. 33.2% of Brookline residents above the age of 5 speak a language other than English at home. Roughly 30% claim a racial identity other than white. The number of individuals who identify as Asian has grown from 15.6% in 2010 to 17.8% in 2020, a 2.2% increase. And Brookline's Latino population grew by 1.6%. The number of people identifying as 2 or more races nearly doubled from 3% to 5.9%, which is almost a 3% increase. Then the percentage of people identifying as Black decreased from 3.4% in 2010 to 2.5% in 2020. Those identifying as white still make up the majority of the population, but the percentage decrease was 6.7%, declining from 76.7% to 70% in 2020. The report also breaks down age categories in town, financial differences, poverty rates, and more. But we think that this diversity in race, ethnicity, and language is very important to understand as we consider ways that we can work together. Tonight's program and discussion is intended to provide information and an opportunity to ask questions. Those on Zoom can enter their questions in the chat or the Q&A and should be sure to enable their chat function. There are instructions from Shayna Pena on how to participate in the Q&A. Closed captioning is also available. After this event, any others who are viewing on TV or live streaming, we would love to have you email your thoughts or questions or interest in the League or League membership to league@lwvbrookline.org. Now to Chris Chanya-Sulcott, our moderator, who will introduce herself and have the panelists provide their own information, and then on to the discussion. Chris?
Hey, thank you so much, Diana. So wow, she had a lot of information and facts and statistics, and I'm going to give you none of that because phew, sometimes I feel like it's a little late. It's like 7:15 now, right? On a Thursday. Sorry, Dan. I just sometimes I'm getting ready to Netflix and chill, not do stats. But her statistics were so important. Something I just want to share and lift up is also if you want to know more about the statistics and the diversity in our town, check out the Brookline Community Foundation's recent report and all the reports that they've done because they've also done a deep dive into that. And a lot of it was founded on the work of the first Understanding Brookline work that was done by Linda Olson Pilkey as well at the Brookline Community Foundation. So if you didn't get all of that, the information is out there. If anything, contact us, contact the league. We'll give you information. Um, but I think everything that I took from all of that was just that our town is getting more diverse, right? But we know this. It's more diverse here, there, everywhere, and across the nation. And I'm Chris Chanya-Sulkett. I live in Brookline, and I think I reflect some of that diversity. And I'm so excited about this talk. So many thanks to the League and Big for hosting this and inviting me along. And I hope that by 8:30, we have solved all of our problems in Brookline together. And we have Chi-Chi's like, what? I see you, Chi-Chi. We figured out, we've got the secret sauce. We know how to reflect and include the diversity that is in Brookline to make sure that our programs and our policies reflect those needs and concerns, and that after this, all we're doing is implementing all those things that we've come up here tonight. Okay, maybe that's, a little big and lofty of a goal, but I like to shoot for the moon, right? So let's see what we can do the next hour. Again, my name is Chris Chanya-Sulkett, and I live in Brookline. I've done a couple things throughout town. I'm currently a library trustee. I've been a town meeting member, and I also was on the League of Women Voters of Brookline's board. It's great. I also currently serve on the steering committee with Chi-Chi Wu of BAFN, the Brookline Asian American Family Network. But really, I think what I end up doing is shuttling my 3 kids around Brookline. Their after-school activities, they are crushing, man. They do too much. And nobody took me up on my, let's just read a book quietly at home. Apparently they like to do all the beautiful things that Brookline has to offer. I'm thankful for it, except for when trying to figure out carpools. So that's a little bit about me. But I would love to let each of our speakers talk a little bit about themselves. I would love, because I'm kind of a nosy person, to know, hey, how'd you end up on this with us? And why, what moves you? Why are you here? Let's talk. Why are you here on a talk about diversity in Brookline? Because I think that we all need to know what made you come here. I know Diane is persuasive, but aside from her invitation, what else was there? So I love calling people out. I was a professor in teaching, so I'm going to start first. And Carlos, you look so happy, so I'm going to go with you. Please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Carlos Rios. I am a resident here at Brookline Housing Authority Veterans Development. And I just turned 30 years old. Scorpio season was great. And I am a queer person of color. I'm also a town meeting member here in Precinct 5. Should I add anything? Should I answer the other questions you mentioned or?
Yeah, maybe something else. What else don't I know? I'm kind of nosy.
Oh, okay.
Why, I mean,
So
you have this background, but like, why are you here? What brought you?
Well, I grew up in Brookline. I went through the whole school system here since I was 10 years old. I was a part of PALS. So I was like a performer here. I also helped in the early years for Brookline Teen Center. And then I was also a community organizer since junior year of high school. So I did a lot of work around youth jobs, the transit justice in with the MBTA. I was actually part of the Youth Pass movement, and now we have the Youth Pass. So I always claim that because that was one of the best wins that we've ever gotten. And now I am also a legislative aide at the State House. So I get to kind of take all of the work that I've done for the last 10 years, and I've done a lot. Like I've worked in a clinic for LGBTQ youth. I've worked in a nonprofit organization where we funded other organizations So I get to bring all of that knowledge back to town meeting and at the State House, and it has been a wonderful ride. I've been grateful that I haven't been alone in this movement. Like I have wonderful, like Chi Chi, Kim, like you're both my mentors, and Felina, you have been wonderful. I've gotten to know you in the last couple of months, and it has been a blessing working with these fine, amazing, powerful women of color.
Oh my goodness, I'm so glad I asked you to keep talking. So Stephen at Big, I don't know if you have like those interview shows, but I think we should do one and just deep dive into Carlos because you've done everything and it's amazing and I want to hear more. But
It's
it's so
already on the books.
okay, good. But it's not the Carlos show tonight, not yet. So now I want to turn to Felina, who Carlos also raised up, is on the board of the League of Women Voters, does a lot throughout the town, and again, one of those powerful women of color. So Felina, tell me a little bit more about you. I don't know everything about you. Oh, you're on mute, but it's okay. I do that too.
Well, good. I'm glad you didn't hear me say it then, but I will repeat it. I said, well, you will never know. Just kidding. Anyway, I've been here in Brookline since the age of 3. Um, and I think that my involvement in town town politics started when my youngest daughters were maybe 3 years old and they're now 23. But at that point, I was just a part of some smaller committees at that time, like the recycling committee. I should not say so small because everything that is done in the town of Brookline is important. There's no measure to it. Whatever we do, we're solving problems. But recycling, what I don't know what it's called now, but it's now a bigger thing. And I think climate change has really fallen onto the map, attributed to some of the work that was done through that committee. As far as the League of Women Voters, yes, I am one of the members of the board, but also a member of the steering committee. I am on the Mass League of Women Voters as the racial justice specialist, specializing with Indigenous matters. There are so many other things I do. I don't want to go into that list because it's not about me. It's about DEI. But DEI was very important to me as I attended the annual convention for the League of Women Voters, and that was a very hot topic. And I felt at that time we were not doing it within our league. So I have brought it into our league by speaking to 4 topics at the beginning of each meeting to cover DEI because it's just something that I feel is very important to raise awareness within our group, especially as we try to bring in the younger generation. If we're not working to understand and meet everyone's level of comfort, then how are we teaching? What are we teaching? So that was the importance to me to be on this panel and just to bring it to the people in Brookline and have a level of comfort for everyone that's here.
Thank you, Felina. Okay, so she can be the next person to be interviewed, Stephen at Big, because she seems to be doing everything in town. So thank you. And now I'm going to turn it to Chi Chi Wu because, as Carlos said, Chi Chi is a mentor. She's a town meeting member, mentor to me as well. And I also want to lift up that she has been awarded a Brookline Woman of the Year award as well by our town's Brookline Commission for Women. So it's not just me, but our town also thinks she is a woman of the year. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Chi Chi. You tell us more about you. I know a lot about you, so you're going to have to dig deep.
Well, Chris, thank you for that lovely, wonderful introduction, lifting me so much that I'm going to have trouble meeting everyone's expectations. For those who don't know me, Chi Chi Wu, she, her, hers. I've been a Brookline resident for about 30 years. I have one child that went through the Brookline school systems who happened to, I believe, be the same class as your daughters, Felina. I think I've known you the longest out of this group because of that. I have been active with Brookline issues for maybe about 15 of those years. mostly with the Brookline Asian American Family Network, which is a volunteer parent group formed to support the needs of Asian and Asian American students in the Brookline schools and their families as well. Chris has been on the steering committee with me of BaFin for many years. She took a little hiatus because she did this tiny little thing like being the president of the American Public Health Association. Talk about amazing roles, flying all over the country talking about public health, which we all know is so important during and after the pandemic. So, the ability to work with folks like Chris has been, an absolute joy. I lift up BaFin first because to me, it's really the role that's closest to my heart. As Chris or as Diana said, Asian Americans, we are the largest racial minority in Brookline. We are over 1 in 6, nearly 1 in 5 residents. And we, that is not often reflected, though, in many places of power and prominence. So, for example, I'm a town meeting member. I think I can count on one hand, the other Asian American town meeting members. Certainly out of 255 town meeting members, 1 in 6 or 1 in 5 definitely is not Asian. There's not many of us, and there are not many Latino town meeting members of color or Black town meeting members of color. I think you're looking at a big portion right here today on this screen. And so representation is really important. There are not enough Asian Americans on boards, on commissions, and so BaFin really was formed to give a voice to this large population that often doesn't have a seat at the table. And we've been doing that for a long time. I think 2011, 2009 or 2011, we've been doing that. As I said, I'm a town meeting member. I'm also on the Commission for Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations. I have a day job as well. I'm a consumer advocate with the National Consumer Law Center. And the other group I wanted to mention that I'm on the steering committee of is the Brookline Equity Coalition, because Carlos and Kimberly are both part of that group. And that's one of my favorite groups too, to be part of. It's not a nonprofit. It's not a 501c3. It's a political action committee, and its goal is to get progressives elected. And it's a lot of fun to be able to work with folks like Kimberly and Carlos and all the good folks at Brookline Equity Coalition. And so I am here today because folks like Chris and Carlos and Kimberly and Felina were also on the panel, because they're just amazing, and the chance to be in conversation on this issue of diversity, equity, inclusion, and representation. How could I pass up that chance?
Wow. So that's a lot of excitement for a Thursday evening on Zoom. Like, way to go. And I feel like you almost gave so much of the talk and you're stealing my questions. So we're gonna dive in more about what you said, Chi-Chi. And then last but not least, for sure, is Kimberly Richardson, our other speaker on the panel. I'm excited to hear from her because, as other people have already referenced here, she's a mentor, she's an activist in town, and she has been named a Brookline Woman of the Year as well by the town's Brookline Commission for Women. So Kimberly, please tell us a little bit more about you and why are you here with us?
I'm so glad this is just a conversation so I can take the stress off my back, because I get stressed out every time we have to do these things. I'm here. So first of all, my name is Kimberly Richardson. My pronouns are she, her. I am a mother first. I'm a BHA resident. And I am a town meeting member, community activist. I am a clinical social worker who works with LGBTQ youth of color, and I love that job. I sit on various boards on Brookline. and commissions, Brookline for Racial Justice and Equity, Women Thriving, Brookline Community Development Corporation. So I'm kind of everywhere. I'm doing everything. And one of the reasons why is because there's not enough diversity on boards, commissions, and in government town meetings. I mean, Chi-Chi just said it. And so when I got the invitation, so I wanted to say, I heard Diane, I think, say, and even maybe you, Chris, they were talking about the stats, right? About like how diverse Brookline is. And one of the things that stands out to me and always stands out to me is the amount of Black people that live here. And I think one of the things that we should be asking ourselves, why is the numbers going down when it comes to Black people, right? Why are they not here, or are they leaving here? Does it not feel welcomed here? And so even though Brookline is diverse, it also needs to be equitable and inclusive. And I don't think we're doing that. And so one of the reasons why this is important to me, I want it to be I want it to be more diverse. I want to see more people that look like me. And even though we're here, I also want it to, to be welcoming and equitable, inclusive. So yeah, that's my story.
So thank you so much for I mean, that's literally the whole point of this talk is I want to figure out, Diana, the league, and I think a lot of other organizations in town want to figure out, why do we have this diversity, and why isn't it reflected in the organizations and the groups that we're in? Or why is it that, Kimberly, you have to be on so many different boards and commissions because there are not enough Kimberly, right? Like I think for folks who are on the Zoom, you didn't realize it, but she was actually triple booked at the beginning of the Zoom, so it's hard, like how do we as a town figure out, because as a town, I mean, I feel like there are times when anyone ever mentions Brookline, they talk about how liberal, progressive, welcoming, warm, diverse it is, right? And how do we stand by that, but really be welcoming? Like, what do we need to do? So that's the whole point, is I want to learn and have a really open and honest discussion from each of you, because you've been here for a while or not. You've gone and done things in other places, and then you're still here and you're doing this in so many different places and spaces. But I guess, and I'm pretty sure looking at the attendees, we're all trying to figure out, how do we make all of these different organizations and community groups in Brookline not only more diverse just for the sake of being more diverse, right? Like, I don't think that's the point. This isn't Hollywood movies or whatever, where we're just, trying to get more characters. But I think it's more so that we know that the work we're doing is addressing the needs and hearing those concerns and feedback. And then also just to be more inclusive. So I appreciate you, Kimberly, saying, I want to know, let's have this conversation. So I am happy if you all want to put questions in the Q&A out there, feel free to do so. And then also, feel free to raise your hand and whatnot, and our amazing Brookline Interactive folks can let you be seen. But I guess I'm just going to start out because Chi-Chi, you had said it too, and you named a couple groups. You had named the Brookline Asian American Family Network, BAFN, and then you also named the Brookline Equity Coalition. But I guess I'm trying to figure out, not just from you, but maybe we'll start out with you, Chi-Chi, and then it's a conversation. You all can chat with each other. Just don't mind me. But why, like, if you had to say, like, what's one reason why you work with BAFN, or one reason why you work with like, what is that special thing? Because I think other organizations, other groups in Brookline need to figure out, what can we do to be more inclusive? So more Chi-Chis and Kimberlys and everyone out there want to be a part of all of these groups. Like, what do you have, like, that one thing that you're like, oh, and you can't say when you're talking about BAFN that it's because I'm in the group, because that, that's understood. Oh, you have to.
Well, I guess, it's funny when Kimberly was mentioning how she's on all these boards and commissions because everyone's asking her, and she feels the need for representation in these groups. It's like we need to reach out to other folks right? Because the same thing happens to me, probably happens to Felina, probably starting to happen with you, Carlos, now that folks are getting to know you, is you get asked and you're like, I can't be everywhere. So start looking around in your own, people should start looking around their own circles to see if there are diverse folks who haven't been tapped before. Your neighbors, the other parents in your kids' class. Start asking them, can you serve on a board or commission? Don't go back to the same folks, because we all got our plates full, right? So start thinking creatively about representation. And then I'm going to start the conversation. Other folks maybe want to chime in. I think one of the reasons, especially that you're seeing fewer Black residents and less diverse residents, this is an expensive place to live, right? And one of the biggest battles has been housing. I'm going to hand it off to someone else if they want to follow that or just completely go in a different direction.
So I see Carlos, you have your hand up. So he is like primed and ready to go. So you go, Carlos. And then we also have a great question from the Q&A too. So I want to make sure to address that. And then Felina, I love it. Everyone.
I think what I'll add to what Chi said about finding other folks is also Brookline in general needs to be more ready and prepared to have difficult conversations and uncomfortable conversations. For example, Brookline is pretty progressive, like we passed a lot of progressive legislation, especially last year, which was a huge win. I remember people clapping like crazy. It was wonderful. But just because we are progressive does not mean that we are diverse. Additionally, just because we have been progressive in certain areas doesn't mean that we are as progressive as we like to say we are. Like I grew up in the Brookline school system, and the Brookline school system is great. Like they try to celebrate a lot of LGBTQ folks. They try to be pretty diverse, especially around like Black History Month and Latin History Month. Like I remember those conversations and those days and those events. So I know that the ability to celebrate folks is there. But I also remember people making racist comments or posting like racist stuff on Facebook, and then us having like a huge meeting in the auditorium about racism and stuff like that. Or when there was an incident with the Brookline Police Department with youth of color. Like these conversations make people uncomfortable. But as a person of color and as a youth of color at the time, I had to put up with it. I couldn't just ignore it. I couldn't just go home and forget about it, because I was still impacted by it. I'm still a person of color. That doesn't stop just because I left school at 3 o'clock. My role as a man of color that is brown and Latino, that doesn't just end when the clock strikes 9, 10, 11, doesn't matter. And so we are progressive, and I see us going in further progressive areas, and I'm hoping that wave continues this coming year. But let's not shy away from those conversations of like, there is racism in Brookline. That exists. We need to be willing to have that convo and not shy away from it. Because a big reason why a lot of POC don't want to be involved, because they're there, my neighbors are all POC, is because they know that these conversations aren't going to be held, and when they are mentioned, they're shied away.
Thank you, Carlos. Felina, you had your hand up. You want to respond?
Well, not so much as respond, but add. As I've said, I've been here since age 3. One of my biggest, and I would like to say saddest memories, was having a principal in my school. I won't mention the name. He may be recognized by what I say, but he was a white older man. And I remember one day, I'll tell 2 short little things. One day I was running down the hall and I knew I wasn't supposed to do that, but I was late for class and I don't like being late for anything. And he caught me. He grabbed me by the back of my neck and he says, "Again, I thought you knew you weren't supposed to do this." And he pinned me up against the glass door. And he saw the fear in my face. The fear was because I didn't want my mother to know that I had been doing something that I wasn't supposed to do. And he definitely liked to tell on me or anyone that he felt wasn't doing the right thing. He accomplished what he set out to do. He scared me. That was that. Later, a couple of years later, I was in high school and he ran into me at the town hall. I was doing an internship because I had taken business co-op. He had just come back uh, from being away. I don't remember where he said he had gone, and he had gotten a really dark tan. He said, "Felina, one more way and I'll be as dark as you." That really hurt me. Like in my place of work, that's what he chose to say to me, and he was a principal. What person says something like that? I had never, in all my years of living in Brookline, had anyone other than him make a racial comment to me or intimidate me. So that was very hurtful. And I was young. I'm 60 now. That was a long time ago, and I'm still holding that memory in my head. One of the reasons I wanted to be on the Indigenous Peoples Celebration Committee, I was asked, of course, I think because someone found out that I was Indigenous. My mother was Cherokee. God bless her soul, may she rest in peace. And also because my daughter, my second oldest, was the person who spearheaded and brought to resolution having the Native American warheads removed from the parquet floors. But that was not before she was harassed, threatened, and sometimes assaulted and fell from being an honor student. I mean, she still graduated quite well, but she wasn't the straight A student that she had been because she had been harassed because of that. But I can't tell you how proud I was of her for taking a stand and doing something that nobody else had the willingness to do. Or maybe the reason. I mean, there weren't many people who came out and said that they were Indigenous. It wasn't at that point something necessarily to be proud of. But I think that each person needs to be proud of who they are and not worry about what others think of who they are. That's always been my motto. I don't care. I am who I am. You accept me for who I am. And if you do, then I'll be your best friend.
So,
And that's
Kimberly,
it.
I appreciate you saying that because I think that kind of gets at this question that someone had put in the Q&A that I want to get at too, which is basically, what are these barriers that are there for residents of color when joining boards and commissions? Is it that they're not accepting of who you are as you are? I think, there's a lot of talk in many diversity spaces about code switching, and, trying to act one way or the other. And I will say over the past few years, I've decided to just try to more embrace who I am and all the differences and, strange things that makes my kids say, "Mommy, you're so weird." And then just hope that those boards and commissions accept me the way I am. So I guess I'm just wondering, what are these barriers? Like what makes it so that you might not join a board or commission? Or conversely, are there some out there that you have joined or you want to join? Like what can we do in the town to make more people of color want to be a part of the solution? Anyone? Kimberly, yeah, because you had your hand up. I want to hear it because you're on every board and commission, right? So you got the full spectrum.
I'm really not on every board. I want people to know that like the boards and the commissions that I'm on, I choose to be on those because they mean something to me, right? Like I'm really passionate about that particular thing. So like with BCDC, affordable housing, women thriving. Thank you, Felina. Felina's really key, the reason why I'm there. And I appreciate her for that. But so when Women Thriving, I care about to make sure that women who don't have a lot can have access to things and they can thrive, right? So I'm in Brookline, so I'm on I say no a lot, believe that. Like I'm setting boundaries. I'm learning how to do that. I have to do that in my social work practice. I have to do that and like this. And so I'm doing that. But I want to say one of the things I think is a huge barrier is that people are often silenced, right? So you join these boards and people don't value your opinions. They don't listen to you. And then you can say something and they're like, okay, they'll disregard that and go on to the next person. And that's not fair. So like, why would I want to sit on a board and, give my opinion or my thoughts and you're just going to disregard them? Now, for me, I have learned to like, I used to be that like code switching, imposter syndrome, all of that. Like, but no, when you see me, you're going to see me show up this way, how I am now. That is who I am. I'm going to come in moving my hands. I talk with my hands. I was told, don't do that. I do that. That is who I am. Right. So I think I show up and I have that. I don't know if it comes with maturity or just exhaustion, right? Like, I'm not going to let you silence me anymore because I've been that way. And so what I think that needs to happen is these boards and commission needs to stop silencing people of color, and maybe they'll be feel more willing to offer and volunteer their free time.
So thank you. I'm glad you're learning to say no. I'm working on that myself, but I'm glad you didn't say no tonight to us. Felina, you have your hand up.
In answer to what Kimberly said, that is exactly why I wanted to bring DEI to the League of Women Voters, because there's, and this is by no insult or finger pointing or whatever, but when I find when you're made up of an older group of people, an older mindset, it's more difficult to get people to change the way they think. But we're very fortunate in the group of the women on the League of Women Voters that they are in fact open to change. It's a little bit difficult, just because change is hard at any age, but definitely as you're older and you've just been set for so long in a certain way. But these women are amazing and they've been so open to hearing what I have to say. And each time we have a meeting, every month, they're applauding me for having brought it to the table. And I only wish that there were more people throughout the town that behaved and responded that way when we want to bring change to the table. There are other meetings that I attend, including town meeting that I'm also a member of, but I feel that I'm muted or not heard. And that's more recently. And that's just very disheartening and makes you not want to participate in things. And I can imagine that's why many other people don't step forward. And if we want to see something different than what we've seen, then we definitely need to make a change.
Thank you, Chi-Chi.
Yeah, I think following up on some of what Kimberly and Felina said and what Carlos said earlier in the conversation, one of the worst things is being asked to join an organization as a person of color as a token, so that you're there, so that they can say, hey, we have a person of color, we have an Asian, we have a Black person, and then not being listened to or being marginalized or silenced or muted. I'm going to be blunt, and I'm going to probably make some people angry. I was on advisory committee, and I definitely felt like that. I mean, there were a handful of us people of color, and there were even fewer of us who were politically progressive, and it was very isolating. And I lasted a year there, because it wasn't just that I was a minority in perspective and I was a person of color, but it was just outright like disrespect or ignoring me. And every time I've had to be back there because I brought a Warren article, you can feel the hostility. Not going to do any good to put a person of color there if they're going to be hostile to them. And if even when the organization's not hostile, you can't just have one or two tokens. I mean, one of the reasons that BC, it's real, feel a lot more comfortable. There's a critical, the politically we're all progressive, but there's a critical mass of us people of color too, right? That we feel comfortable together. So there's that. And then, I think one of the biggest factors, and I'll be blunt about it again, is that a lot of these boards and commissions, the folks who have the time to put in are older, retired. They don't have full-time or day jobs, right? And that tends to skew white. Let's face it, a lot of us people of color, we got to go to work, right? We check.
We have mouths to feed.
Yes, in your case, hungry mouths, 3 hungry
And as
mouths.
they get bigger, they eat more.
I know. So, that is another barrier, right? I mean, we've all remarked upon it, the fact that a lot of these bodies tend to skew older, retired, and therefore white.
Carlos.
I will bring it back a little bit and say in outreaching to more POC, I was recruited pretty young. And I was in Steps to Success and I was pretty engaged in that. And Steps to Success has been such a wonderful resource in my life. They probably helped me learn the importance of DEI, just because like they provide opportunities and experiences that most families living in public housing won't experience, and so when a friend of mine came up to me and was like, "Hey, come to this organization in Boston," and I was like, "Well, make me go on the train, going all this way after school. What's going on?" And he was like, "Free pizza, free pizza. Okay, I'll be there." And so like that's what started my journey, but that same practice still stays with me, like trying to figure out how to engage your community, even if it's just one person, that can make a huge difference, And I'll mention this because like I think it's really important. When I was running for election last year, I made a very big deal
Sorry,
to
running for town meeting election, right?
yes, town meeting election. I made a very big deal to reach out to my neighbors because I know that my neighbors are not they're not usually showing up to local election. And I live in public housing, like BHA, and most folks like they don't knock on each other's doors for the most part. So I was very adamant to get to know my neighbors, knock on their doors, and ask for them to vote, many of whom would never vote in a local election. And I made a big deal because I was a part of a slate. And I told those folks on my slate, if you want to make an actual difference this time around, you have to come with me and knock on these neighbors' doors. They're going to be hella confused to see a random white woman knocking on their door at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, but that made a difference. There are so many times when we knocked on these doors and I heard two things. One, no candidate has ever knocked on their door, or no one who lives here has run for an election for a local town meeting. Both of those things I heard. My mom heard it, my friends heard it, and it made a huge impact on me. And so this year, my plan is to do the same thing, but to kind of convince my neighbors, why don't you run? Why don't you run? You know the community here. We're about 200 people here alone. But then I think of the folks in Egmont and like, Kim, you're a neighbor there. Carlos Tamayo's a neighbor there. Y'all have been knocking on doors for years now. And so it's gonna take some effort because you don't know the folks there sometimes, but knock on people's doors. We know where folks live. Go to the village, go to Egmont, go to the Veterans Development. Like, we're here. Go to Steps of Success. Go to their room. Ask them and invite them to events.
So, Carlos, I just want to add, and totally we'll get to Kimberly in a second. Sorry, I'm going to pull moderator privilege. Is that even a thing? I don't even know. But anyways, I want to say, I need to put it out there because I ran for town meeting years ago, And I need to make sure people know that you might find it scary. Like, I don't know, like I found door knocking to be like highly nerve-wracking. But what I found was helpful is if I could find some friends to door knock with me, that really helped. And so I guess I want to say is a lot of times there are white people, I will just put it out there, who are like, you should run. Well, aside from just telling me we should run, like help us, come and door knock with me, be my buddy as we walk around town. I think that might be something. And I love that you said, you know, no one votes and a lot, but it's not just people in public housing, like our voting in town elections as a town in our town elections is not great, right? So we can always do better wherever we are in Brookline. But Kimberly.
I just want to speak to what Carlos was saying, you know, about knocking on doors. You're right, knocking on doors is really hard. Like it's like I hate it, but you have to do what you have to do. But you know, Carlos, I'm thinking about like why there's never anyone in BHA or in High Street who ever ran for town meeting. Because if you think about town meeting, and if you just look at it, most of the seats that are taken up are by mostly white, mostly older people, starting to get a little younger, right? And that's who's nominating. So even if people run, the chances of them winning is very slim. And I'll give you a perfect example why. During the redistricting, we specifically made precinct 4 and precinct 2 these majority minority like precincts, right? An opportunity for people of color, right, to run for a town meeting and to get in office. And it didn't turn out that way, right? So for precinct 2, we were lucky to get 3 BHA residents, right? 3 people of color. There was a 4th person who ran, but she got beat by other white people in our district. And so one of the people who were running called me and say, what can I do to help out and make sure that we, you know, don't run? Or if you do run, how about you knock on doors for me? Or you tell people that this precinct is for, you know, ensuring that there's some representation. So that's the hard part, right? So like, how do we make room for new voices, for low income, for people of color, and we had an opportunity and we missed the mark. And so we need to figure it out. And you know, and understand that the people who live in public housing and in different places, there's all kinds of incomes throughout Brookline, but we need more representation on town meeting.
And to add to what Kimberly's talking about is town meeting, we have in the Q&A, someone said, you know, it's also just really hard to speak up at town meeting. And so town meeting, you have the 255 town meeting members, and then you add select board and like all these other people, and then the public, and then big, I love you, but you're also like live streaming it. I think I don't know, in maybe 10 plus years of being in town meeting, I think I've spoken up twice because it is nerve-wracking. And it is very, you know, nervous. It's hard. So I think that also is something else. And the person in the Q&A said, well, maybe we should get together as a group, practice, and really encourage each other to speak up so that the voices can be heard. Of course, we have to get them elected, right? Like Kimberly is saying. So I wanted to make sure that we lifted up that it's not just the getting there, it's the getting there and then being heard as well. Chi.
I mean, I just want to add to that. It is hard enough to get up there, work up the nerve to speak, figure out what you're going to say. But we have to acknowledge also that the structure of town meeting doesn't lend itself to giving people the opportunity to speak. I mean, I brought a few warrant articles. I brought one, the last one. Kimberly was lined up to speak. Remember, we were and it was shut down. They called the question. Someone, in fact, we got maybe 3 speakers, and then someone called the question, and all these people who were lined up ready, who prepared their remarks, and who and included you know, renters and people with very personal stories, and including Kimberly, were all shut down. And that happened more than once in the past town meetings. And so, you know, you get someone who's willing to put themselves out there, talk about their personal experience, maybe a person of color or a marginalized person, and then you get shut down and they call the question, or the moderator takes questions and answers instead of the people from the list that was agreed to. And all that work is for nothing. So if you're, that's another barrier to giving marginalized folks and people of color a voice.
Thank you. You can always count on Chi-Chi to just say it out loud. Felina.
I definitely agree with what everyone is saying with regards to town meeting. In fact, I'm fearful because I moved back home and I have to rerun, and I'm in a new precinct now, which is not 2 or 4, I'm in 6. So I don't know how that's going to turn out. But what I will say is, as to what you said, I do remember the question where the warrant article that you're speaking of that you didn't get to speak. I too I was the one of 2 people who wanted to make a comment. I think I was actually next in line for the renaming um of the was it Lincoln School, when they were having the debate, and I wanted, not Lincoln School, I'm sorry, Heath renaming. And I wanted to just say thank you to the students for how hard they worked, because I had actually gone with with other committee members from the Indigenous Peoples Celebration Committee. We saw and watched how well they articulated themselves, how much effort they put into such a long task at their age, and they just gave it everything. And I felt that they really deserved the opportunity to be heard, to have that given to them during town meeting. And of course, I didn't get to do it. They called the question. And I think a lot of the calling of the questions is because too many people who say the same thing had repeated the same thing over and over. And this happens at every single town meeting. So by the time somebody who has something different to say gets there, nobody wants to hear it. And most of the time, it ends up being a person of color. And it's just shameful. I mean, what can we do about it? It's a good question. I don't know if we have an answer, but
Yes.
something needs to change.
It looks like someone's like, maybe, they put in the Q&A, looking at sort of the dynamics of town meeting, the moderator, someone else has just put in, what about changing our form of government to address these issues, which I know that there are folks looking to study this, the Charter City Commission, so yeah, like it's a systemic issue, right? Like all of these are systemic issues. They were started years ago and we're still dealing with them today. So I saw Kimberly, your hand, and then back to Felina.
Oh, no.
I wanted to speak to what Chi-Chi said, right? And then well, it's all the same thing. But I want to say that it's not always people getting tired of hearing the same thing over and over, because on that housing stability warrant article that Chi-Chi had, we didn't even get to our speakers barely, and it was cut off. And I think one way of fixing that, we need to be very careful about the people that we're choosing to elect. We need people who are fair, right? Who are not like that's maybe in the middle, who just like, well, all issues matter and not just your issues or your side. And I know a lot of times we get silenced because people don't want to hear us. They're like, those are the usual suspects. We don't want to hear from them. We know who they are. They're back. They're this. They don't want to hear. And as far as I'm a big believer in changing our form of government, and the reason why the vote, in my opinion, the reason why our turnout is so low in town government is because when I lived in Brookline, I moved there in 2011, 12. I didn't know anything about town meeting. I knew nothing. People don't know. They don't know that we have 5 people sitting on the select board, making all the rules, right? Voting on our budget and everything, right? And if we change that, right, to like, we have a mayor or whatever form we choose, but this form of government is not working anymore, in my opinion. It's just not. It's not equitable. It's not inclusive. It's not diverse. And I'm gonna be shut up now.
No, it's okay. I want you to talk, so anytime. Felina.
I didn't really mean to re-raise my hand, but I will just speak to, well, actually, no, I won't. I can't do that. So never
Okay,
mind. Forget that I
Carlos.
raised my hand.
Let's turn it over to you, Carlos.
I will say there's definitely a learning curve. Like, it's my first year as a town meeting member, and I remember like a really wonderful friend, she sat me down because I was like, "Oh, I'm interested in running." And she's like, "Okay, do you have a Sunday off where I can explain stuff to you?" And I thought it was gonna be mad quick. I thought it was just gonna be like, "All right, so this is how you're gonna fill out your registration for blah blah blah." And then it ended up being a 4-hour meeting of her explaining town meeting, what to expect, what it looks like, and she is so wonderful because the fact that she was able to explain it to a novice, like, not all forms of government are the same, like, just because I was at the state house doesn't mean I understand all forms of government. And this was a moment where I was both humbled, but then also understood the importance of me running. Because, like, it is that barrier of not knowing how town meeting goes or how, like the process is. It scares people. It makes folks not want to run. And as a person who is very young, who I don't really consider myself extremely intelligent and a fast learner, I tell folks just do it. I tell folks, especially neighbors, like, it's intimidating, yes, but once you're in there, you're gonna realize that you know a lot more than other people. It's just gonna happen, and you're never gonna be alone. Like, I called Chi and Kim mentors because it's true. Like, they guided me in my first year. And there were many times where I would just text folks and I'm just like, are we voting? Like, what's going on? Like, what's happening? Who's speaking now? Like, I was just lost in most of those times. And to have folks who have been seasoned and know what they're doing has been a huge blessing to me. Um, and so, like, I want so many young folks to be running. Like, I have been pushing really hard to try and get folks in substance success to be more interested, to shadow me at town meeting, because we need to start reaching out to youth in general. Like, there's a group there that are interested. We just gotta show them the ropes, per se.
I so appreciate you said that. And I guess when I look back on the years when I first ran for town meeting, I'm very thankful is I had a couple of friends who like helped me, like physically door knocked with me, physically helped me get signatures, physically stood in the rain with a poster board to vote for me, like people actually really did help. And I had people who came and tried to get me to run and things. And so, but they didn't walk away. Right. And to be there that whole part. And I love that you're getting people to shadow you at town meeting, although I'm worried that will turn them away from wanting to join town meeting. Just kidding. But okay, so we have a lot going on in the chat and I want to lift it up. So Tommy Vitolo, who is one of our state reps, said he's happy to give a tutorial. He takes pride in helping and he'll do it for anyone. So I'm going to put that out there. And then someone also mentioned, we really need to look and debate our town government, which seems to be happening. And I know that the moderator is setting up a committee to look at that. And then the other thing that I want to make sure we get at, because it's similar, it's not the same thing. Nonprofits working in Brookline are not the same as the town government, but I think they like, let's be honest, our nonprofits are trying to fill all those services that our government isn't able to address, our food insecurity, our housing and whatnot. So someone asks, what way, tell me folks, you are the smart activists, what ways can nonprofits in Brookline be more welcoming? If you are working with a nonprofit right now, why? And don't just tell me it's because you love their like mission or vision, okay? I love my pups, but I haven't been able to join the Animal Rescue League yet because I have dog allergies. Yeah, go, y'all, like figure it out.
I'll just hop in very quickly. So recently I joined Brookline Community Development Corporation. And it has been a wonderful experience. A lot of learning. Again, I haven't been as involved with a board this active before, so it's been a huge learning curve for me. But one of the reasons why I was so eager to join is because, in my opinion, you should always have folks reflecting the people you're serving. and BCDC serves a huge, vast community, but the majority of those folks are people of color. So your board should reflect that. Your staff should reflect that. And that is something that I think should be across the board, like not just in town meeting or on the nonprofit. It doesn't matter where you are. You always want to make sure you're reflecting the people you serve, whether they're queer, whether they're people of color, whether they're women. You want to make sure. And you also want to be conscientious, I think that's the right word, of intersectionality. Like, there are times where we're going to be serving folks who are women and queer, or people of color and they are living in public housing, or, and like intersecting identities exist. And you want to make sure that your staff reflects that huge colorful rainbow of people, skin tones, identities, genders, because now there's a spectrum of genders now that we are finally understanding. Like, we need to be able to cater to everybody. And the
I'm
most
gonna push you, Carlos.
okay.
How can we get that diversity on maybe that nonprofit board? Like, how can we get that diversity on the nonprofit board to mirror maybe what the organization is serving? Like I know a lot of boards are like, we recognize it, we get it, but what can they do to get more Carloses and Kimberlys and Chi-Chis on the board?
I can go, but I also want to make sure that my other panelists speak.
Yeah, anyone share your answer?
My answer to that would be to go take part in events where they know they are going to find these individuals. I am so happy and eager to insert myself into any comfortable or uncomfortable situation to get what I believe is deserved in the situation that is needed. So I have people in my life that are of all different, on all different spectrums, gay, straight, whatever. And I think it's important that you ask the right people to help pick the groups that you're looking to fill positions for. How else are you going to get the right people? So insert yourself. Don't be uncomfortable.
Go
Make
to them.
yourself seen.
Go where they.
Yes.
Okay.
And they will
Thank
welcome you with open arms.
Okay, I love that. Okay, so there we go. Actionable item. Go where they are. Chi-Chi?
So for the Asian American community, again, we're nearly 1 in 5 residents, so there should be a lot of us in town. And, you probably know a few folks. So think about who is around you who, you might want to reach out to and say, what do you think about serving on this nonprofit board? I mean, it should be an easier lift than town government. This is a nonprofit board. It's not running for something where you have to put yourself out there. Again, don't do tokenization. Don't just have 1 or 2 folks and then sort of put them out there for show. Listen. If you're talking about an organization that's serving folks, one thing to always consider is having client board members. I worked for an organization that grew out of the legal services movement, and legal services organizations have client board members. Because it's very important to have the voice of the folks being served on the board.
Thank you, Chi-Chi. So again, go where they are. Think about having, clients or the people that they serve on the board. Another thing I will add, because it just sort of happened to me recently, and I was like, oof, there's a committee I was thinking of joining because I felt, I wanted to be another voice that hopefully will get heard. And then I was told, I'm so sorry, this committee is pretty much only going to meet in person, and you have to kind of pretty much guarantee that you'll be there in person all the time. And the reason why I share this is because that's not very welcoming, for a whole host of reasons, whether you have childcare responsibilities, job, work, accessibility, like you name it, that's not very welcoming. And I guess I just put it out there. Think about, Are your meetings all in person? How long are they? When are they? Yeah, when are they? You know, so I have some groups that like to meet at like 10 o'clock in the morning on a weekday. Like, that's not like, people work, right? Carlos is like, well, I'm not going to be on that. You know what I mean? So just, those are other things to think about. How often do you meet? What is the lift? Um, if you meet at dinner, do you serve dinner? If you meet at dinner time, excuse me, you know, do you serve dinner? I know that sounds ridiculous, but that's just like one more thing that a busy caregiver has to hopefully not think about, you know, if they're going to your meeting. So Kimberly and Carlos.
Carlos had his hand up first.
You can go. I talked a lot.
Well, I was just thinking about what Chris said, and I think, you know, every board isn't for everyone. You have to pick and choose what works for you. I think that board should absolutely have an option to for hybrid, right? So shouldn't have to be, you know, in person. If you can't make one day, make Zoom available, right? That's one thing the pandemic gave us, Zoom. Like, we appreciate that. We get to do this right now, right? But I think you choose what works for you, for your lifestyle. Um, and you know, I think when people should ask. So if you see people doing great things, or what you consider great things in town, and you think they'll be great on a board, I think you should go to them. I mean, I spoke earlier to Felina, talking about how she recruited me, which is funny. Um, uh, I've been living in Brookline Public in BHA since 2011. I never, you know, I've gotten emails from Women Thriving. I was not interested in Women Thriving. They had nothing to offer me for my lifestyle, I thought. And then, so when Felina called me, I was like, I said all what I just said. That's not my lifestyle. That's not helping. They're not meeting the needs that I feel like the residents need. And she said to me, well, that's why we're asking you. Maybe you can bring some change. What? She recruited me and she said I can make change? Oh, I'm sold, right? I said, you know, so you send people, if you know people that are doing good stuff and you want them, you send people to go get them. And it's simple.
Felina, Carlos, Felina, sorry. I was trying to figure out first.
I think also flexibility. So, the truth of the matter is, like, we can say like, oh, you want to have like the people that you're representing on the board, but is that same board and organization flexible enough to cater and change your schedules and change their setup to be more user friendly for folks who are coming in? You know, like as you mentioned, like I'll use BCDC as an example. Like we're serving a lot of families who are working 9 to 5, and then when they get home, they have to take care of their families. Are we willing to change our schedules and the way we meet to allow those folks to join our meetings? You know, like I'm so grateful that BCDC is hybrid. Like there are times where, like Kim, for example, like you just said, you had 2 meetings right before this one. You're a busy person, but the fact that that flexibility exists is very, very important. And so for nonprofits that want to be diverse and want to commit to diversity and equity, you have to be willing to be flexible enough to meet the schedule of the people you want to bring in.
Felina.
I will say 3 letters to DEI. If you're not giving people the opportunity to participate, then you are failing. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay, Chi-Chi.
So, do you know that the boards of businesses, of corporations, pay their board members? Now, nonprofits can't afford that, but they can provide other support. I mean, somebody mentioned providing dinner if it's dinner time, you know, childcare, you know, a year or so, maybe a few years ago, there was a report out of the Office of Diversity, and one of the things that was noticed, you know, mentioned was the the need for more diverse folks on boards and commissions for the town. I mean, the town could afford to provide some childcare for boards and commissions, right? Things like that to make it easier for folks to serve.
So I totally hear you. I've had 3 kids through my time at town meeting. And for the vast majority of my time in town meeting, it was in person in a high school auditorium for hours on end, which was not very family friendly, I should say. And I remember times where I literally ran out of town meeting because I had to go home and relieve my babysitter, because I can't lose my babysitter, right? That I was also paying for. So I think, there are a couple of things that you've each brought up that make sense. Like Chi says, okay, maybe you can't pay them, but you could do meals or childcare. And something I will want to add to that is maybe, and some people are like, oh, maybe have babysitters at town meeting. That's actually not going to work, because like the time of town meeting, like I need someone to babysit my kids in my home and put them to bed. I'm just going to put it out there, because that idea like seems nice in practice, but it's, as like a parent, like I can't haul my kids to the high school until 10:30 at night on a Wednesday, right? So we have to, really think outside the box. Chi reiterated it again. I appreciated it when committees and boards and things that I was on either were very open about us eating at the meeting, or even provided food or snacks or a meal at the meeting, because that just makes it easier for people. It's one less thing to think about. And then Kimberly, you were like, Zoom, this is what COVID, and yes, like I guess I really think we need to think, if you're a group or an organization that's not offering a hybrid option, why? And it kind of goes to some of the questions we had, is what are you afraid of, right? What are you afraid of hearing, Brookline? Let's be honest with ourselves. Like, we need to be brutally honest, open, and get this feedback that we're not getting. Felina.
I was going to say that I had suggested at one point that we have a body of students at the high school, which should be tapped into. And they would be more than happy to be making the money for this. And when the kids were in elementary school, we used the 8th graders to babysit for parent-teacher meetings. So there's absolutely no reason why juniors and seniors couldn't be signed up to do that for the same. But also, some of these committee meetings, especially during the winter months, I think it's socially irresponsible to be holding meetings that are not hybrid with COVID now. It's not going to go away, and everybody has children. Bringing people that have been around other people that they don't know what's going on and bringing that back home. Right now, COVID has totally been reactivated. So with that in mind, they should be really considering, is it really a smart thing to have a meeting totally in person and cutting out people who could participate, who might be bringing them more than they ever hoped for? Just a thought.
So we're hearing that, the purpose of the nonprofit group, the town board or commission, and all those things, the purpose of it is important to all of us and to people of color, right? But it has to be, it sounds like, really 3 things. And I think, Kimberly, you had sort of discussed them earlier with Diana in a pre-webinar talk, that there were these 3 things. There's, the purpose, but then I heard you also talked about the structure, and we've talked about this. Maybe everyone needs to take a deep dive on their own organization structure and say, how do we meet? When do we meet? Are we literally, like Felina said, those 3 words, diversity, equity, and inclusion? Like, are we welcoming? Like, not just like having you sit at the table, but making it so you can be heard. When is the meeting held? What time? It's, there's snow and ice out there. Why aren't we hybrid? What can we do to facilitate why you can't come? Or if it's running for office, how can we help form your kitchen cabinet campaign support team to get you to run successfully the first time, right? And then there are these other things I think you talked about, Kimberly, with Diana earlier. This 3rd thing, I like everything in 3s. I have 3 kids. I'm all about 3. So this 3rd thing, I think, is really the other secret sauce of how we can be better organizations or better boards and commissions is these intangibles, these things that are not a Zoom function or whatever. And so I wanted to say, because I want to put it out there because I hear it, we're all sort of nibbling around the corners, is things like the people that you're with, that you like being with them, that they are a mentor, that Chi and Kimberly mentored you, Carlos, like that's how you got roped in. So that those intangibles. Are there other intangibles that groups can, aside from their structure and their purpose, think about doing, taking a deep dive into themselves to say, look inside, like, what can we do to be more inclusive and welcoming? Is there something else? What am I missing?
I think, Chris, that people really need to think about what it is to be in the place of the person who's in search of placement in that organization. Like you wanting to be a part of that committee. Somebody on that committee, do they understand what it maybe meant to you? What your life is like, what you have to offer, you being a mother of three when maybe they have no children. Their life looks one way, your life looks another. Everybody needs to understand each other so they can see why something might be so important to that person trying to get in the door. If they don't know or understand, then they don't know what it means to you and they don't care, but they need to care. So finding a way for them to understand you without you having to tell them, because you shouldn't have to. If you're there at their door, that means you care and you deserve a seat at the table.
So I love that you said that. And it kind of made me think, you know what? For a couple of the boards that I've served on, it actually all started as a board member asked me out to lunch. And heck, I'm never going to turn down a free meal. And we ended up just talking and I realized I liked them, liked what they were doing. Oh, I'll check it out. For the BaFin meetings, I'm going to be honest, I'm a terrible cook and the other BaFin steering committee members are amazing chefs. Like I have eaten so much at some meetings that I literally have food coma afterwards and have to lay down after the meetings. Those are some intangibles I will put out. Another one is also, Selena, I think what you're really getting at is to get to know the other people, to see their side, to see where they're coming from. And I see what you're saying as, let's be kind, be a friend. And I will say a lot of boards that I stayed on for a very long time have become, because the other board members I'm with, I feel they are my friends and family. So I kind of see, like, I think that's kind of what you're saying to me or speaking to my heart, Carlos.
To add on a little bit to that is there's beauty in how diverse. I'll just use this group for an example. Like we have so much representation here and it's beautiful, and that's something that I barely see. And I saw a question earlier about like how there's some divide between other races, and that's true. There's divide in genders, there's divide in sexualities, there's divides in race. That's always gonna be there. But it means a lot when you appreciate another person's differences, whether or not you understand them, whether you fully grasp who they are as a person or as a human being. Like you and I may never, like I will never understand what it means to be an Asian person. I will never understand what it means to be Native American. I will never understand what it means to be Black. But I am so grateful that you're here. I'm so grateful that you exist because you add a perspective in life that I can never understand, and you bring it to the table. And other people who you also represent can see that and they can feel welcomed. And that is why I've been so grateful for these wonderful women here, because they're like Felina, Kim, Chi, you've all been not just mentors to me, but guiding lights in Brookline. Like there's so many people I want to name, from Malcolm Cawthorn, Deborah Brown. Like these are folks who guided me throughout my life from high school to now. And like they'll never understand what it means to be queer Latino 5'4", 5'4" or whatever and a half. But like I still felt welcomed, I still felt heard, and they helped me develop into who I am today. And so I always encourage nonprofits, people thinking of running for office, like I appreciate you. I love who you are as a person. We may be different, but that's great.
Thank you. And someone said, Carlos, you're being so nice, so kind. Chi Chi.
Well, so I'm going to throw it right back at you, Carlos. You've been amazing to work with too. And it's been so wonderful to get to know you and to see you take on all these different roles. And I think that is part of something that can sort of be soul satisfying to be part of an organization, is to watch folks come in and grow and become effective. It's really gratifying to see a younger person sort of blossom like that, and you've definitely done that. So back at you.
So we have learned, so part of being a moderator is to making sure we end on time. And I feel bad because I love this and I feel like I could talk forever. So maybe there'll be a part 2 in the future. I'm looking at you, Diana, and Stephen at Big. But I wanted to say we started this because we have amazing activists, Chi-Chi, Felina, Kimberly, and Carlos here to talk to us about what can nonprofits do, town governments, boards, and commissions do to be more diverse, to be more welcoming to diverse folks and people of color. And we tackled a lot of different things from, we've heard advisory committee, that was not welcoming, to town meeting, maybe we need to rethink this and how can it become better? But it seemed like we were touching upon 3 main things. One, you need to look at your purpose as an organization or a board. What's your purpose and how do you want to honestly, let's rip the Band-Aid off, really tackle this problem, and include people of color in the solution that you're trying to go for. 2, what's the structure? Again, let's look at it. Are you on Zoom? Are you making everyone come in person during these winter months where there's, I'm a public health person, where there's COVID, RSV, pneumonia, strep. I mean, you name it, it is crazy. You have to look at your structure. Are you providing food? And then the intangibles. Once they're there, are you hearing them? Are you kind? Are you bullying? What is this? Oh, and Felina says, don't forget about intersectionality. I'm not just an Asian woman, for example, right? We have so many different parts of our background. Recognize and celebrate that in others. And so again, we're almost done. I'm going to turn it back to Diana in a moment. But again, this program has been brought to you by the Brookline Interactive Group. Support them. They're amazing. They really are making sure your community is aware of what's going on in your community. So Stephen, shout out to you and Big. We love you. We love you, Big. But also, of course, the League of Women Voters of Brookline. They do not just put out the nonpartisan guide on who to vote for in your town elections each May. They do so much nonpartisan research and education so that you can become educated voters. And we had a great question from Shayna from the board. She said, and I want to know, so we're gonna just do a lightning round. You have you have 10 seconds to answer from our 4 speakers. It's a big election year, Shayna says. What can the League of Women Voters do to get people out who don't vote to vote? Chi-Chi, 10 seconds.
Oh my God, that is a tough one. 10 seconds is way too little.
Now you're using it up.
Come back to me.
Okay, Carlos.
Make things more digestible for folks who may not be in this world. Make it easy for them to understand.
Yes, stop with the acronyms. That drive me crazy. Felina.
Go take their hand, be willing to take them where they need to go, explain things in detail, provide what's needed, and whatever is needed.
Okay, take them by the hand, be there for them, take them through. Again, like Carlos said, he needed a 4-hour tutorial on town meeting. And seriously, I need like a whiteboard to describe town meeting, right? Kimberly, what can we do to get people who don't vote to vote?
Let them know that it affects their day-to-day life in Brookline.
100%. You need to vote local because this is where we determine if the tea is going to run and how often in your town, whether your trash is going to get picked up, your taxes, your schools, with your streets will get plowed, right? Vote because it matters where you live. Chi-Chi, I'm coming back to you.
Oh, my co-panelists that gave such great answers. I have to fall back on the one that's been a theme through this. Food.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Food. Do you know that there is another neighbor who often has bake sales, but you can just for a nominal amount, or she's also very kind and gives away food, and she puts them there at some of the polls just for people. And I think that's lovely. So yeah, food, right? So thank you so much to each of you, Chi-Chi, Carlos, Kimberly, and Felina, for sharing not just your time, which is precious, but of your experience and your honesty and your candor. Thank you to Diana and Shayna from the League for organizing this and being here to have this here. And of course, everybody, we love Brookline Interactive Group. Thank you so much, right? So now I'm gonna, oh, Steven, there you are. Oh, we saw you. We love you.
Could I just actually add, everything I heard today was something actionable, something where knowledge needs to be shared and with people who don't necessarily have access to it. So please, please reach out to Big. We would love to work with anybody on getting these messages out on anything. So I just want to share that. Please reach out.
And Big does it all. They do videos, they do recordings, they do podcasts. I mean, they're there, they are, full, they do everything. And if they don't, they'll help you figure out how to do it. So Diana, you get to close this out.
Okay, it's 8:30. I know we had a long, absolutely fascinating and engaging conversation. So all I want to say is thank you to everybody. This has been so useful, so genuine. It's really beautiful. And we will review everything that you said and really think seriously about what we can do within the League of Women Voters to address everything that you've been talking about. So with that, I'll just say good night. Thank you to everybody, the panelists, and to Big.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.